All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kakadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers. And peace and blessings, salutations to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word in truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bashem Al Shai. Pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Al Shai. All right, and what I want to get into today is going into continuation of the book of First Samuel. All right, the 21st chapter. All right, and we know, that young David, is now, on the run, okay, from King Saul, and King Saul is pretty much has a manhunt out for young David, and this is going on, this back and forth is happening right in the midst, of Israel, okay. So now this is the main thing that's going on amongst Israel is the infighting between, all right, young David and King Saul, okay. And we're going to see, something very, spiritual happen in this chapter. Something extremely spiritual that points towards Yahweh Shai. When the scriptures say Yahweh Shai is in the volume of the book, this is literal, in the accounts, in the stories, and the law, and the prophecy, okay, the gospels, like Yahweh Shai, the volume of the book. This book points to Yahweh Shai, okay, and that eternal, all right, priesthood under the order of Melchizedek that was ordained, before the world began, okay, which that priesthood is going to rule, okay, in righteousness forever in the earth and beyond. All right. Now, when you go to 1 Samuel 21 and 1, it says, then came David to Nob to Amalek the priest, and Ahimelech, all right, Ahimelech the priest, and Ahimelech was afraid, all right, at the meeting of David, and said unto him, why art thou alone, and no man with thee? Verse 2, I'm going to go to the NLT. It says, the king has sent me on a private matter. David said, he told me not to tell anyone why I'm here. I have told my men what to meet me later, so he's finessing. We're going to see young David, finessing this chapter, man. That's why the scriptures talk about how wisdom gives us subtlety, because in this moment, it's good for young David to be very discreet in how he's moving, because he don't know who's loyal to, King Saul or not, so this is a very, sensitive situation that he's in, but he's moving in a very subtle spirit, as we come into the times with even in our day to day, we should move with a form of subtlety, man, not being an open book, okay? Not the scripture say that let thy left know what thy right hand doing. Okay? So when you go here to Proverbs real quick, Proverbs 1, all right, and matter of fact, the Proverbs 1 and 1 said the Proverbs of Solomon, the son, all right, of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment and equity, to give subtlety to the simple, all right, to the young man, knowledge and discretion, man. Okay? So this wisdom gives subtlety to the simple, man, as we once lived, in simplicity, all right? Not really knowing how to maneuver in the wisdom of Yahweh Bashem Al Shai, okay? But this wisdom should give us a layer of subtlety to where, we're not moving to where we just easily, figured out to where, people just have the ups on us because they got us figured out, from front to back. Nah, man, we should have a layer of subtlety to ourselves, man, with this wisdom and how we move in this world, okay? And we see King David, he displays that, in this chapter, all right? So it says, verse 3, it says, now, what is there to eat? Give me 5 loaves of bread or anything else you have. All right. It says, we don't have any regular bread. So this is the priest. All right. It says, the priest answered, but there is the holy bread, which you can have if your young men have not slept with any women, all right, recently. Don't worry, David replied. I never allow my men to be with women when they are on a campaign. And since they stay clean even on ordinary trips, how much more on this one? So now the only thing that they have is the holy bread, which their bread was only for the priests. Okay, but this is just the Lord showing, all right, that that eventually there's going to be a union between the king and the priest, because there was two different offices held in Israel. All right, as the kings will be of Judah, okay, and the priests will be of Levi. Well, under Yahweh Shai, under Melchizedek, okay, that order, all right, that office of a king and a priest is going to be combined into one. All right, and we're going to prove that, but just to show that their bread was only okay for the Levites. When you go to Leviticus, I believe it's 24. When you go to the book of Leviticus, all right, 24 in verse 5. All right, it says Leviticus 24 and 5. It says, and thou shalt take fine flour and bake 12 cakes thereof. 2 tent deals shall be in one cake, and that it says, and thou shalt set them in 2 rows, 6 on a row, upon the pure table before the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai. All right, verse 7, it says, put some pure frankincense near each row to serve as a representative offering, a special gift presented to the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai. Every Sabbath day, this bread must be laid out before the Lord. The bread is to be received from the people of Israel as a requirement of the eternal covenant. So this bread went into a what? Eternal covenant. And we're going to get that as well, man. It all links into Yahweh Shai. All right. So the bread then for the priest was for an eternal covenant. Okay. It said the loaves of bread will belong to Aaron and his descendants, who must eat them in a sacred place, for they are most holy. It is the permanent right of the priest to claim this portion of the special gifts, all right, presented to the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai. Okay, and we see in this manner that King David is partaking in the priest's bread, all right, showing you that that office eventually be combined, and that bread also represents a covenant between the Lord and Israel, which Yahweh Shai, he's that ultimate covenant, which we're gonna get. So let's go back, to the book of Matthew. All right, let's go to the book of Matthew 12, and Yahweh Shai made a reference to that. This is Matthew 12 and 1. It says, and that time Yahweh Shai, all right, went on the Sabbath day through the corn, and his disciples were hungered and began to pluck the ears of corn to eat. It says, but when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto him, behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath day. But he said unto them, have you not read what David did when he was an hungered, and they were with him, how he entered into the house of the Most High and did eat the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, neither for them which were with him, all right, but only the priest. Okay, so now Yahweh Shai is going into spiritual matters, man. See, this was above their head, because they were stuck in the technicalities of the law, that they was missing, all right, the spiritual dynamic Yahweh Shai was coming with, man. Okay, with the spirit, it exceeds the law. Okay, and it says, or have you not read in the law how that on the Sabbath days the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless? Okay, when you read this in verse 5, it says, and haven't you read in the law of Moses that the priest on duty in the temple may work on the Sabbath day? Because the priest was still lighting incense, doing particular things, in the temple. Okay, because they had that office of serving Yahweh Bashim Shai, those priests. All right, and Yahweh Shai, he was coming to put an end, to that Levitical priesthood, and begin to establish the order of Melchizedek. Because in this grace period, We're rehearsing the righteous acts under the order of Melchizedek, man. This is what Yahweh Shai is establishing, man. Okay? He didn't do away, he didn't do away with the law, and he didn't teach to break the law. Okay? It was a spiritual transition happening, man. It was a new order happening, man, to that authority that the Levites had, okay, in the old covenant. All right, they don't have that authority under the order of Melchizedek. All right, that authority is distributed amongst all the tribes. Okay, the men of all the tribes, man, beginning with the first fruit, those 12,000 men from each tribe. You know, you see, which those disciples, all of the disciples wasn't Levites, okay, but they was under the high priest Yahweh Shai at the time, man, okay, and what they was teaching daily, okay, they was doing a priestly work, okay, and it says, um, verse 6, but I say unto you that in this place is one greater than the temple, okay, which he was speaking of himself. Okay, so Yahweh Shai himself is greater, okay, than the temple and the Levitical priesthood order. Yahweh Shai he comes with a greater order than that. Okay, an eternal order. The Levitical the Levitical priesthood was a temporal order. Okay, that led up to Yahweh Shai. You see, this is why when you go here in this account, the book of Matthew, chapter 17, all right, verse 1, it says, 6 days later, Yahweh Shai took Peter and the two brothers, James and John, and led them up a high mountain to be alone. As the men watched, Yahweh Shai appearance was transformed so that his his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as light. Suddenly appeared, all right, Moses and Elijah appeared, all right. Suddenly Moses and Elijah appeared and began talking with Yahweh Shai. Peter, Peter exclaimed, Lord, it's wonderful for us to be here. If you want, I'll make 3 shelters as memorials, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. But as but even as he spoke, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, This is my dearly loved son who brings me joy. Listen to him. So Yahweh Shai vouched for Yahweh Shai above Moses and Elijah. You know, because Yahweh Shai was above that. You know, Moses representing the law and Elijah representing the prophets. Well, Yahweh Shai, all right, he embodies the law and he embodies the prophecies, man. It's all in him. Okay? He doesn't conflict with the law of the prophets, but he embodies those things and he's greater. Okay? Than the law itself and the prophets, because he is the embodiment of the law and he's the top prophet, man. Okay? Under the order of the Heavenly Father. You see? And they couldn't get that. You know, so what King David did, was a foreshadow, of the office of king and priest being one. Okay? When you go here into prophecy, all right, this is the book of Isaiah, chapter 60. Okay. Not 61. All right. This is Isaiah 61 and 4, and this is prophecy. It says, And they shall build the old waste, they shall raise up the former desolation, they shall repair the waste cities, the desolations of many generations, man. And that's the house of David being built, and also these heathens in the kingdom, they're going to physically build up our infrastructure, man. Okay? And strangers shall stand and feed your flocks, and sons of the aliens shall be your plowmen and your vine dressers, man. So this is the heathens being in complete servitude, just as they were under the throne of David. Okay? And it says, But ye shall be named the priest of the Lord. All right, Yahweh Bashim Al Shai, men shall call you ministers of our power. Ye shall eat the riches of the Gentiles, and in your glory shall ye boast yourselves, man. So it said we will be called priests, and it didn't specify a specific tribe. It said ye, because it's speaking to all the tribes, the men of all the tribes, man, beginning with those first fruits. Okay? And you go here to, all right, Revelation chapter 5, all right? And it was always set up from the beginning, because we'll get that, all right? Well, in fact, we'll get that in Genesis, then we'll get that in Revelation. So this the book of Genesis chapter 49, okay, and 10. It said, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver, which a lawgiver is what? That was the priests. They were the lawgivers, okay? But in this prophecy concerning Judah, all right, the scepter which represents, the throne, the king, the office of the king, but the lawgiver represents the office of the priest, okay? It said, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be, which Shiloh is Yahweh Shai. And when he comes, what is he going to do? He's going to establish a new priestly office amongst Israel after the order of Melchizedek. Revelation 5, okay, and 9. It says, and they sung a new song, which this is what we're doing now, as we prophesy, saying, thou art worthy to take the book and to open the seals thereof. All right, Yahweh Shai, he loosed, this knowledge, all right, for us to have in this time. For thou wast slain and hast redeemed us to the Most High by thy blood out of every kindred and tongue and people and nation. Okay, so that sacrifice redeemed us back to the Father. All right, the sacrifice of Yahweh Shai, and it also set the set it up for us to have a new covenant in which we're going to come into when he returns. Okay, and it says, all right, and those different nations and kindreds and people, speaking of Israelites, and we got to get it, because it could always be someone's first time, watching. All right, and you go to the word kindred in the Greek. All right,
Strong's G 5443. Fule.
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 All right, and you go here. What does it say? In the New Testament, all persons descended from one of the 12 sons of the patriarch Jacob. Okay, those are the men that will be singing a new song, the descendants of Jacob. Okay, those are the ones that are redeemed. All right, the descendants of Israel, the elect of Israel, are the ones redeemed in this time. All right, and eventually the rest of the nation is going to fall under their mercy in the kingdom as they're born into the kingdom. Okay, but you go back um to here, it says, it has made us unto our power kings and priests, and we shall reign on the earth. And have made us unto our power kings and priests, that royal priesthood, and we shall reign on the earth, man. So King David, what he did, eating that showbread of the priest, that represented, partaking in Yahweh Shai, the bread, okay, represented Yahweh Shai, and the new priesthood, okay, which was going to combine the office, which King David was a Judite, and he would, he was a king, okay, but he partook in things only, that was lawful for the priest, and it shows you that it was, a combining of both offices, man, okay. Would you go here, just to show you how a Shai was that bread? So you go to St. John 6 and let's go here. All right, this St. John 6 and 26, and this is after he did the miracle. St. John 6 and 26, Yahweh Shai answered them and said, verily, verily, I say unto you, you seek me not because you saw the miracles, but because you did eat the loaves and were filled. Verse 27, labor not for the meat which perishes, but for the meat which endureth unto everlasting life, which the Son of Man shall give unto you. For him have the Most High, all right, the Father, sealed. Okay, so he was going into spiritual bread now. Okay, they was in awe of the miracle of him multiplying the physical bread, but now, all right, he's beginning to talk to him of the spiritual bread, which is him, the bread of life, man. Because as we partake in Yahweh Shai, we're digesting life, man. you know, We're being revived, all right, with life, man, as we partake in Yahushua. You see, we're learning the ways of immortality, man. Okay? Because um real quick, which we got that the other day, let's get that in the book of Wisdom of Solomon 1, all right, in 15. Okay, and what does it say? It says, for righteousness is immortal. Okay, because in order to maintain right, in order to um the earth is meant to be ruled forever. Like the way that, things die and come back, the way things give abundance and multiply. The earth is made, all right, to be eternal and immortal. Okay, but it takes a righteousness to run it, okay, forever. You see? So Yahweh Shai is teaching us righteousness, okay, for the sake of immortality, man. To rule immortal, to be immortal. There's only one way to be immortal, and that's in righteousness, man. Esau's trying to do it in wickedness, and that's why it's tacky, all right? It's low level, okay? It's not working, all right? He's missing the mark, okay? There's only one way to be immortal, and that's in righteousness, and we're learning that from Yahweh Shai, okay? Through partaking in that bread, okay? It said, then said they unto him, what shall we do that we might work the works of the Most High? Yahweh Shai answered and said unto them, this is the work of the Most High, that you believe on him, all right, whom he have sent. They said therefore unto him, what sign showest thou then that we may see and believe thee? What dost thou work? Okay. Our fathers did eat manna in the desert, as it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat. Then Yahushua said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, Moses gave you not the bread from heaven, but my Father giveth you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of the Most High, all right, is he which cometh down from heaven and giveth life unto the world. Then said they unto him, Lord, evermore give us this bread. And Yahushua said unto them, I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth on me shall never thirst, man. And as we began to partake in Yahushua, we don't thirst for other doctrines, for other ways, for other, another culture. No, we thirst for this, man. As the scriptures say, as we tasted the Lord and see that he is good. See, we, experience it. We're beginning to experience righteousness and the peace that it produces, the simplicity, man, and the humility, man, and the favor. Like, nah, this is it. We don't want anything else, man. Okay, so the elect, are beginning to thirst more and more for righteousness, man. Matthew 5, all right, and 5 it says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be satisfied, man. And we're being satisfied, with the bread of Yahushua, and we're going to be even more satisfied when the kingdom is established, man. And righteousness is the standard of the earth, man. You see? So everything, that we read, is routed back, to Yahushua. All right. So going back here, 1 Samuel 21:6, it says, since there was no other food available, the priest gave him the holy bread, the bread of the presence, all right, that was placed before the Lord in the tabernacle. It had just been replaced that day with fresh bread. All right. And then it says, now Doeg the Edomite. Now this is speaking of an Assyrian. All right. There's a and you go into it because you go into the Hebrew word, for Assyrian, and Edomite is similar. All right. So this is supposed to be an Assyrian. It was an Assyrian. All right. But he pretty much is going to spy out on King David and the priest, and we're going to see what that goes into. But that's a misprint. That's supposed to be an Assyrian. All right. And it said, now Doeg the Edomite, Saul's chief herdsman, was there that day, having been detained before the Lord. And then it said he's a herdsman. Esau, all right, can't be around no animals, oversee no animals. Absolutely not. All right. It says, David asked Amalek, do you have a spear or sword? The king's business was so urgent that I didn't even have time to grab a weapon. I only have the sword of Goliath, the Philistine whom you killed in the valley of Elah. The priest replied, it is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. Take that, take that if you want it, for there is nothing else here. There is nothing like it. David replied, give it to me. So David escaped from Saul and went to King Achish of Gath. All right, but the officers of Achish were unhappy about his being there. Isn't this David, the king of the land? So the heathens already, they looked at David as the king. You see, because the Lord was setting it up. So the heathen already looked at David, as a king. Okay, because the reverence that they had, and the fame of King David's name, young David, his name went out. So he was already reverenced like a king amongst the heathen, man. And that's why I say, brothers, hey, keep tapping into this, man. Hey, eventually, hey, Lord willing, we're in the number. We're gonna be those kings spoken of, man. Okay, in prophecy, man. Okay, it says, but the officers of Achish were unhappy about his being there. Isn't this David, the king of the land? They asked. Isn't he the one the people honor with dances, singing? Saul has killed his thousands, David his 10,000s. David heard these comments and were very afraid of what King Achish of Gath might do to him. So he pretended to be insane, being subtle again, scratching on the doors and drooling down his beards. Finally, King Achish said to his men, must you bring me a madman? We already have enough of them around here. Why should I let someone like this be my guest? So he's playing his part, to throw off, the king of Gath, king of Kish. Okay, that subtlety. So that was the point. And the main thing was, the bread of life. The order of Melchizedek. Kings and priests in the earth. Okay, that's what's to come. So Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters edified. Till next time, I say shalom.